Of course, the man next to me needs no introduction, 1998 National Sprint Car Hall of Famer Bobby Allen. Next to him, his son Jacob Allen and grandson Logan Schuchart. So gentlemen, thank you for being here. We appreciate it. Lots of things going on with Shark Racing. Jacob, if you sit back like that, that doesn't like disclude you from the conversation. You have to talk at some point. We make you talk. That's just part of the game here. No, but we appreciate you being here. Lots going on with Shark Racing the last couple of years. A lot of, I mean, this is really some exciting times for the entire team. Congratulations on another fine season. We're going to talk about what's been going on out on the road with you guys. But I thought first off, what we might do is, Bob, get started with you. You know, it occurred to me when I was looking across your considerable history that if you had not made the move from Florida, Pennsylvania racing history could potentially look a whole lot different than it does on so many fronts when you think about some of the guys that came along with you and your contributions to the sport here. Like so many, you got started at an early age and came about it, honestly, your dad was involved in motorsports.
Yeah, my dad was a good friend of Bill France, and he raced the beach, and et cetera, and then, okay. So then he got me into racing go-karts and half-inch in Florida, and that was with Jim Rathman, who was an IndyCar driver, so that made my goal to be an IndyCar driver. Well, at the time, when you read about it, you had to run sprint cars. That was a stepping stone to get an IndyCar. So Pennsylvania, because you also had to be 21 then, and I wasn't 21, was to come to Pennsylvania where they ran the most on dirt tracks to familiarize yourself with sprint cars. So basically, that's how I ended up here. And I drove Stevie Smith, Richard Lupo, and several guys that came up with me to help, plus wanted to drive too. And so anyway, that's where it started, and I ran there. I did do briefly USAC a little bit, but it rained out every weekend, and I ran out all the money I'd saved, and I thought, and I didn't like people telling me what to do, and they kind of had rules, and I didn't like rules. So then I came back to that, and I started running these other races, and they were called outlaw races because they wasn't under any organization.
Bob, out at the National Sprint Car Hall of Fame, I believe there's a magazine that was on display when I was there last summer. You were on the cover as the 1962 World Go-Kart Champion. Talk a little bit about what that meant to you at the time. You were, what, all of 18 at that point? Is that about right?
Well, basically, I was 16. I was 16 years old, and it was 1960 and 61. I actually won the World Go-Kart Champion, and that's what actually started too, because I was working for Rathman and racing these half-midgets and go-karts down there, and then I got to go to Europe racing with them, and I won like I forget, it was a little over 5,000, about 4 months, make an appearance. Had a race in Nassau, it paid $4,700. I got to go to Europe 2 times to race. Well, a kid at 16 years old back then, that's old now. The kid started 8 years old now to race, but that was young for then to go win the races. And I won that money. Well, that was like winning 50 grand, you know, 5 grand. So, and if you told me I wasn't going to Indianapolis, you were wrong, because I was a big. It all went to my head. This is what I'm going to do. I was a cocky little kid racing, and that's what I took off doing. And that ended me up coming to Pennsylvania, like I said, as a stepping stone. But then I didn't like to tell me what to do, so I just started running the cars all over the country.
Bob, you talked about working for Jim Rathman. This in the Miami area?
Yes, I'm from Miami originally.
Okay, so you worked for Jim Rathman, and for those of you who may not be current on your Indy history, Jim was the 1960 Indy champ. So Indy for you, that was your vision, that was your dream. That dream was all that much more stronger, I would say. Working for a champion, you knew what the possibilities were, and that's where you were going.
Yeah, that's where I was around them all, and I got to hang out with a lot of the drivers, and I liked the way they acted. That's what got me a little bit, not wild, but on the crazy side. I seen the guys were always playing jokes on each other and doing things, so that's the kind of stuff we did all our life too. We've seen them do that, and I thought that's how you had to be.
Bob, when you were going as a youngster, you'd go to some of the local speedways down there. Where did you go to watch before you started racing, and who were some of the drivers at the time that were big names?
Well, we run down there the go-karts, but when I first got a race car, and I bought it from Bobby Brack, we had a track called Medley Speedway, Hialeah Speedway, West Palm Beach, Hollywood Speedway. Well, I had a car that I bought from Bobby Brack, and that's what I got to run. I got to run mainly Hollywood Speedway, Medley a little bit, and Hialeah just once or twice. I usually ran just late models, but I ran there and I ran. That was all macadam racetracks, and that's what actually helped me really run good on slick tracks, because there you drove off the right front, you rode the asphalt tracks. You didn't run it like on dirt. You seemed to back them in a little bit more, but I drove a cardboard straighter, and it helped me on the slick tracks. But those are tracks that I did run then.
Yeah. So many of us today, Bob, when we think about Florida, we think about Speed Week, and a lot of people coming in from the outside, a lot of big names are there. But when you were growing up, there were a number of big names that were running down there on a pretty regular basis. Guys like, Rags Carter, I think the Allison brothers, Red Farmer. Those were some pretty big names that were in Florida at that point. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I actually dated a girl that owned Red Farmer's car. They all them guys. There was Pee Wee Griffin, Herbie Tillman, Rags Carter, they Rod Perry. A lot of these guys were all the top guys, and they all go. They kind of would go up north sometimes and come back, and then the Allison brothers, they did the same thing. They'd go up there and they'd run, and then they just started all staying up there and running there and come back down home a little bit. In fact, Donnie drove my car one time, and their brother Eddie worked for me for a little bit. He showed me some things to do on race cars, because I wasn't used to, at 10 o'clock at night, the car was crashed, coming over here, let's get to work on this thing now. I thought by that time you should be in bed or go out somewhere.
Bob, do you remember the first checkered flag you saw in competition? What car you were driving, where you were?
You talking about sprint type cars?
Yeah, when you started down in Florida, outside of go-karts, we'll say.
I would say, well, I don't even know if I want to race down in Florida.
Okay.
I don't know if I want to race down there. I might have won one or something, I think. I don't pay attention to that stuff much. But I knew up here, I won some races with 456. When I got this car from Charlie Hill, we ran that at Dorsey Speedway. And that's why one reason I never got big about points. Now it's better for points because it paid money. I remember I ran Lincoln all year long. I won the point championship and didn't win a race. I thought, well, you don't deserve to win the point championship if you didn't win a race. So I was always against points. I think the guy that deserves it should win, win the most money or win the most something to get it. And I just like running and jumping all over. But I won some races at Dorsey, but I actually think Dorsey Speedway might have been one of my first ones. I don't really know. I know I won some races at Hagerstown.
Right. So mid-'60s, a lot of the guys that we talked about, the big wheels in Florida are going north. There's a little more money, I suppose. And you decided to pick up and follow suit. You're following the money, some opportunities, and you're settling around the Hanover area. You had the 4A at that point?
4A, yes.
Okay. And we're running the Grove in Lincoln. And Hilly Rife at that point was promoting in the area. And understand that he helped you out a little bit, paid you a little bit of money to come run?
Yeah, I thought it was a big deal. He paid me $40 a race to run. He had 2 tracks or 3 tracks sometimes at the time. So I thought, well, I was going to get rich. I never seen money like that. But I was down home and paid $150 to win a feature. So that was a lot of money to me. So I thought, that's it was a good deal for me.
Lynn, did Hilly Rife ever pay you? Did he cut you a check of any sort?
Yeah, he give me checks, so,
Yeah?
yeah,
How'd that work for you?
not good.
That's all I thought.
Yeah, he didn't trust Paxton, he trusted me. I kept.
And so it begins. So you come up this way, Bob, and you mentioned Charlie Hill. You started running for him. You had your own car. Did Richard Lupo get into your car at that point, or what was Richard's? How did he get into the scene? I know he was crewing for you.
Yeah, he was crewing for me. I think he actually got a ride with somebody a little bit.
Okay.
And then later on he drove for me, yes. Stevie Smith did. Steve did. I mean, Steve did. He drove one of my cars when I went to, had to run for this guy, and he wanted me to run Sealands Grove, and I told Steve he could run it there. Well, I got home, he crashed the car, he said, I got something to tell you, and it was all tore up. I said, well, I got something to tell you, you gotta stay up all night, because we gotta fix the car, because we went to Hagerstown. No, Richard drove, he drove for Ruby and guys, and then later on, when we was running there at Lincoln, and running good, we had the 1A, 2A, and Richard drove for me then, for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Richard, is he telling the truth? Of course. All right.
And they called Richard the bushwhacker, because that was before they called him slide job. Now, he was the bushwhacker, he'd slide into him. They called him the bushwhacker.
You slide into him or in front of
I'll
him?
pitch you about that in a minute. I never hit him.
We all remember things different.
Well played, sir. Well played. Early years in Pennsylvania, there were certainly some struggles, and you had to sleep where you could. Some of your stories regarding the Lincoln ticket booth are legendary. Can you tell us a little bit about that in those early years?
Yeah, we needed a place. We pulled in, we needed to sleep in the truck, or there was a ticket booth, and we opened it up there, and it was warm inside there, so we slept in there. One time at Susquehanna, because I had a 46 Ford when I first came here, or one of the time I first came here, it sat up a little bit high, enough you could sleep underneath it for it to get warm. And then we were at Susquehanna, and the guy said, "You going to race here?" I said, "Well, I don't have the money for pit passes," so the guy paid my pit passes to go in. I just did whatever I thought what it took to race, what I thought was still right that we did. I mean, we'd go down the road racing. We'd stay outside of a motel, because back then the doors didn't slam shut when I was starting to go on the road back and forth. And I'd wait there till people would leave 6, 7 in the morning. We'd sleep in the truck, and if the doors cracked open, we'd go in and shower, and we'd leave again. Or swimming pool, or car wash, anything that made sense to take a shower. Sometimes you skipped it a few days.
Logan, you guys sleeping under rigs or anything at this point, or you got beds now?
No, we got it pretty good.
All right, good. Just checking.
Yeah, they get sick of me saying what we used to do.
Yeah. How about the barns at Williams Grove?
We did go to the barn there. I think they told us we could pull the rig in the barn, and we pulled the rig in the barn. We slept in it, and he didn't. And later on, they had a house there. They were going to make a thing about it. And I had Rich and my friend from Florida. We were playing cowboys and gunslingers to run kind of this thing, with an old abandoned house, and they would kick the doors back and all that kind of stuff. Well, they didn't like it, so they kicked us out of there.
The Charlie Hill 456 Super Modified, that was late 60s. At that point, Tommy Sanders had come on board as your mechanic, and Tom has credited you with a good bit of his success. Talk a little bit about Tommy and that partnership, if you would.
Yeah, Tommy Sanders come and helped us. He was a hard worker, and he was one of the, usually my gang, if we raced Friday, we were Friday afternoon getting ready to get to the racetrack. What I liked about Tommy, by Tuesday or Wednesday, he had everything ready to go, and I wasn't used to that, so he worked hard and he tried hard. He was definitely a good help and a good friend.
Yeah. So I think it was 1968 you built your first sprint car. Does that sound right? Around there?
Yeah, roughly. Yeah, I had that modified, and I went to Charlie Hill. We built kind of a sprint car there. We built it, and he was like a lot of things. You kept waiting on him to weld it up or get it done. He wouldn't do it. He didn't do it. So then I thought, well, I'm gonna learn to weld. So I just started. I had a little bit of experience gas welding, so I learned to weld the car. We put it together, and the car felt too stiff. And I remember grinding all the torsion bars down, and all of a sudden the car was real fast. We won a lot of races at Lincoln that year, and we did really well with it.
So you've always been a hands-on guy. I want to read a quote here, Bob, from Jan Opperman, and if you could comment on this. Opp said, "I don't know where or how Bobby Allen learned his stuff, but he was a mile ahead of everyone else. Because of Bobby, sprint car driving got to be a lot easier."
I always, from a little kid, I seemed like I had a lot of common sense, and I always think a couple years ahead. And it seemed like things would come easy to me on what to do and how to do it. And what made the most sense to me, I like light stuff, and it just, when you think about it, it seemed like to me it came easy to me to do that. Just like they make the statement, it's not the same thing like Larson. They talk about him out the road, Brad Sweet. He said that kid, ever since he raced, had a vision. When everybody else, he's like a really good quarterback. His vision is when he sees cars moving, it's all slow motion to him, and he just gets through and knows where to go at the right time and right places. And I felt like I was that way. It seemed like I had a good vision on how to make a car work and et cetera, et cetera. Now, I would go around and everybody was winning. I'd always stand there and stare at the cars, and I was real quiet. Of course, they thought I was eyeing it over to take something or something from a thing, but I wasn't. I learned a lot. I learned a lot by looking at things and paying attention, and it just, to me, it was just common sense. Like somebody said, water runs downhill. Well, that's true.
Rick Ferkel at one time paid you a very nice compliment. He said, you know, we were working on things like roll center heights, looking at lightweight metals, wings, tire combinations, and so forth. He said, at that point, we were trying to learn what Bob had already learned. So it appears that you were well ahead of where most of the racers were at that point in builders.
Well, in some ways, but a lot of times it was luck. You learn stuff more by mistakes or what it's here, and they'd come over there and they'd say, how come you got this like that? And I'd say, well, I can't tell you. Well, I didn't know either. Just you get a lot of credit sometimes that you might not get. Or you get a lot of credit when you do deserve it and shouldn't have it.
Lincoln Speedway titles, 1967, 69, 70, title at Susquehanna in 69, had a title at Reading in 76. So the titles were there, but you've always been a guy, as mentioned earlier, that you prefer to chase the good-paying races. 1969, you joined the Emmerich team. Pretty prosperous time. You're with them 5 years or so, had over 65 wins. Talk about Shorty Emmerich and what that point meant to your career.
Well, at that point, I mean, I was starting to do good in Paxton's actually the reason for that. Emmerich wanted to have two cars. He was the one that always ran two cars. And Paxton said, you know, you need to try this boy Bobby Allen. I think he'll do you good, et cetera, et cetera. And we seemed to hit it off good. And I went down to his shop and built the cars down at his place. And it just, I guess the rest is I can't say as much about it. I like driving for him. He did tell me one thing. I was the first one that ran for him that actually didn't cost him money once it got going. He said he was used to Bobby Abel, and he named a couple others that it cost him a lot more money to run the car. But we ran good enough that it paid for the things we did. He ran everything out of Chevrolet and his construction company then. But I liked him. He came down to my shop. He'd run all my errands to run and get parts. He was good to us.
Lynn, did you cost Mr. Emmerich any money, or did you make money for him?
Well, that 1 year, Bob and I think Bob won 21 and I won 21. We won, I think, 42 features that year between us. Good year.
Yeah.
And I remember at the end of the year, Mr. Emmerich came in and he added everything up. He lost $5,000 that year. He said, man, we can't have another bad year like that.
Yeah, he lost that on Paxton's car.
Thank you, Bob. That's the clarification I was hoping for.
I got to meet Paxton too, because he tried to get right into that way, you know that.
Yeah. Some great photographs over here, by the way, Bob's history, and there's a photograph here of Bob, Lynn, and Mr. Emmerich. And I think one of the things I love about the photograph is, if you can show that to the crowd, Mr. Emmerich, for those of you who didn't know, came to the Speedway in a suit and tie,
He did everything with a suit and tie.
which I think is just fabulous.
But what's kind of ironic to Bob and I, this is 1974. Mr. Emmerich received an award that day. The problem is now, Bob and I are both older than him at that time. How's that make you feel, Bob?
Yeah, Paxton thought he was old, because he quit racing 10, 15 years before I did. He said, I got to quit this thing, I'm too old for this.
Wow. I'm not used to the silence. I don't know what kind of spell you have over this guy, but this is not how it usually goes, Bob.
Hey,
I'm sitting up here, and he's
He
down
did
there.
good for me. He did good for me.
Okay.
He taught me a lot of stuff.
Yeah?
But he also cheated me like hell, too.
Uh-oh, here we go.
We'd go somewhere, and at the time, he controlled my car, too. I was just a driver.
Yeah.
And we'd go, like, out to run the All-Star show, and I couldn't figure out why I always had a bad number, and Bob always had a better number. The draw was pretty important. Then I found out he'd draw my number, or he'd draw a number, and it was a good one, it was his, and it was a bad one, I got it, and he got another draw. So I stopped that after about 8 months.
Sounds reasonable.
Hey, question, Bob. That picture, was that the National Open?
1974 National Open.
No, he won it in '75.
Yeah, in your car.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, no, that's the year
That is the
before.
National Open.
One of the good ones for Paxton, I remember, I think it was Oroville or track like that, and it didn't have a guardrail, and Paxton, he was running second or third, ran off the racetrack, came back on, and I ended up running second or third, he ended up running fourth or fifth, and I always collected the money. So I went and got the money and come back, and he wanted to know what he made. I said, they didn't pay you because you ran off the track. They haven't raised you. And he ran all the way up to the thing to find out what was wrong, because it pissed him off. We all like Patrick, he doesn't like money. We all like money, but he has a little more emphasis for it. But he come back there and he said, you son of a gun.
There he goes, he got out of his chair.
How about Hagerstown? The 100 lapper down there. We went down and Bob broke leading it, and he's sitting down in the corner, and I run for about 3 to go, and I blew a motor, and I pulled in right beside him, and he said, what are you doing here? I said, well, you look so lonely. He said, over. Anyhow, I did the next year, I think I won the feature, and we were pretty happy because it paid pretty good. We drove back to the shop. Bob got home and couldn't find my envelope. We looked everywhere, we backtracked. Here the dumbass, when he signed in, he left it laid down at the Hagerstown. Otherwise, it would cost him a lot of money.
I think he's telling the truth now.
You lost our money too. What was that, all $1 bills he gave you that time from my bill?
Yeah, that big race I won at Pennsboro, Richard ran third, and it paid $6,000 for third, and I put the money in the attic for my Florida money, but I never counted it. And also, I've had a few things with promoters not paying. Sesky was one time, but I'll tell that story later. But he had the money all wrapped in his thing there, $6,000, and then he had my check for $10,000 or $20,000. It paid $25,000 to win, I think. And he never signed a check, so I chased him down, but I never counted the money. When I got the other money I spent, that money I counted. Richard's money I had in the attic. When it come time to go to Florida, I laid it out, and there was only $3,000 there. Of course, naturally, I called the promoter, and I just opened it, and I had somebody come count it. I cut all that kind of stuff. I thought I was just getting like, I couldn't see it straight. Well, nope, there was only $3,000 there. I called the promoter, and he said, well, our record showed that came clear that money was paid. So anyway, there was $3,000 there. One time, Susky, the envelope, and it was short money, and I opened it right in front of the bank teller, and it wasn't much, it was like a couple $100, but it said, so when I called the racetrack, they said, well, we'll pay you half of that. I said, half of it? You owe me, it said you owe me $200. I did it right at the bank, I can tell the lady that. He says, well, we feel like you should have counted it there. And I said, well, I'll tell you what, don't give me nothing or give me the whole 200. They did end up giving me 200, but then that happened a couple other times at other racetracks. They would, you go to count your money, you didn't have it, you didn't get it, so I guess I need to count the money more, but I should be more like Paxton, because he would have counted it.
Bob, when you were with Mr. Emmerich, he gave you the opportunity to indulge in your Indy fantasy, at least to an extent. Talk a little bit about what that was like and how long that lasted for you.
Well, it didn't last too long. Yeah, Emmerich, he bought a car from Grant King, and he put a Chevy in it. We went out there with that, and definitely, we went out there and we put it there. Well, at the same time they did that, USAC opened it up so they could run all these other offies. And I had trouble with the motor in Phoenix, but I went to 2 or 3 places. Out of 13 Chevys, I was quick till I had trouble with the motor. It was the fastest Chevy, but it was also a half a second slower making the show because they had so many cars in the other offies. So then that's when I tried to do it a little bit, and I ran out of money that I'd saved from racing around here. And then I decided, you know what? I'm gonna go back to running what I've been running, because they like to tell me what I was gonna do, and I didn't see no way in the world that I was gonna, if this thing here, it'd be hard to make the show with it, because it wasn't fast enough to Chevy at that time. And so I just decided not to, to run it anymore, and then we just sold the car.
Mentioned earlier, 1975 Williams Grove National Open champion. Of course, one of the big races on the annual racing calendar. Paid $3,500 to win. Have you ever gone back and talked to Justin Lowe about the other $61,500 he owes you?
No, I did talk to Knoxville about it, because they said the same thing to me when I won Knoxville. It paid $35,000 to win, and I just came from a race at Eldora that paid $50,000 to win. They said, how does it feel to win the biggest race? I said, it don't feel that big to me. When if I want to pay $35,000, I just let one pay $50,000. They said, you're right. We're going to do something about that next year. And then that's when it started really to increase. So that still was still pretty good, but I like the deer now that pays $175,000 to win.
Came pretty close this year. How about it?
Yes, we did.
That was a pretty remarkable run, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later for sure. Bob, tell us about your involvement with the World of Outlaws. Did Ted Johnson, of course, kick things off in 1978? Did he come to you prior to that with some sort of proposal and say, here's an idea I have, what do you think?
Well, this is one that there's still different versions of. My version is Debbie May and I were sitting in my office, and Bob Trossel wrote a thing saying, if they need something to call something like King of the Outlaws, how he phrased it. And Debbie May and I were sitting there saying, well, you know what, that don't seem right. Because Doug Wolfgang had won 40 races that year without a place, and not to be bad, where the competition's not that tough, and if they ran time trials, it rained out, they would call it a race. Well, Ted Johnson earlier, a year or so before that, ran a race in Shreveport, Louisiana, and he invited a bunch of us down there. And he did say then, he said, you know, I'd like to get together with you guys and kind of form a few of you guys and go run different racetracks, get you a little money and go run this and that. And then that kind of fell apart. And then through that, me knowing him, I got him to come run a race at Lincoln Speedway and I think Susquehanna in the beginning. And so when he went, but back to what you're saying, when he said that to Trossel, about Trossel saying that, well, I called Ted Johnson, me and Debbie called him up and said, Ted, we need to do something. We have something where we call something the King of the Outlaws, the World of Outlaws, et cetera, et cetera. He said, well, how are you going to do that? He said, there's only a few. I said, well, there's only a few of us that really run around the country. And we said we should do it off money one, because that guy like Ferkel that traveled and ran races. So a guy that traveled and ran all the different races that won the most money, he should be the King of the Outlaws or the World of the, or something like that was based on that. And he kind of said something, and then he talked to Ferkel about it, and then he actually talked to Lanny Edwards about it. And they said, yeah, there's something to it. So then they went to Florida in the beginning. It was really supposed to be the first outlaw show. And then they changed it and said, no, we're going to do any race that pays $2,000 or more to win. It's got to have to be a bigger race. And that came through Lanny, Ferkel. And in fact, I didn't get to go to that first race there. I went to Florida on the first one, had a point championship, and they changed it. But that's how my involvement about a little bit of a stepping stone the World of Outlaws coming about, because they did it, because we did in the first year. These guys think we travel back and forth now. We traveled back and forth then. We were zigzagging all the way across the United States, going different, and different promoters did the same thing. They'd see us come there, they said, well, we can't pay no $2,000 to win, but they go to a race that paid $2,000, all those guys showed up, and the crowd was packed. He'd say, you know what, we're going to do this. So then the next year, they started getting more and more shows and zigzagging back and forth, et cetera, et cetera. And then they started getting, it had to be a sanction organized 2,000 to win the next year after that. They knew they had something, they could get money, because they didn't get no money the first year either on the point thing.
Bob, you mentioned traveling. A little bit ago, you mentioned, when you were talking about your cars, you said, I like light. I was told that at some point in your career, when you're traveling across the country, you used to stop by airport junkyards, and there were some parts you were looking for.
Well, I did that. Ben Cook did it with us too. You know, because airports always had aluminum bolts or aluminum light stuff. Bolts mainly. We'd go look for bolts and et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, that's why we stop at airports to find it, like Oklahoma, and then places that had surplus bolts of aircraft stuff.
Yeah. There's a whole resume that would just take forever and a day, but 86 Jackson Nationals victory, Eldora Nationals same year, 89 Tuscarora 50, and of course the 30th annual Knoxville Nationals in 1990 among the big races on that resume. And it's been quite a career, and at age, 76, you just celebrated your birthday December 28th, I believe, back out on the road again. And this time, a little bit different role. You don't have the responsibility of driving, but as team owner and director, it's got to be a thrill to be able to work with your son and grandson.
Yeah, I try to manage it. I try to teach them how to do it on their own, and they're actually doing a pretty good job. Makes more arguments sometimes, but besides that, they do a good job running stuff. I still drive the rig up and down the road.
Do you still do most of the driving?
I do, I'd say 95% of it.
I was going to say, I heard during an interview within the last couple of years that you don't like to give up the wheel.
I really don't mind it. It's just, well, first of all, the toter we had that went up and down the road, it wouldn't climb a hill, but it also wouldn't stop coming down the hill. And it was actually pretty scary a lot of times. So finally we got one that now it's got a jake brake on it. We didn't have a jake brake. And it makes a big difference, so now I can relax. Now, you might not mind driving, because you don't want somebody new going down there and try to learn some of the stuff you already learned new.
Yeah. Logan, a couple years ago, in that interview where you mentioned that your grandfather does most of the driving, there was another interview where I heard that you guys were able to sleep a good bit while you're going down the road. Now I understand why you went to sleep, because if it's that scary, you don't want to be part of it, is my guess. So, mentioned Bob turned 76. We have someone else in the room that's turning 76. Matter of fact, celebrating a birthday today. Mr. Paxton, happy birthday to you, friend.
You're older than me. He turned last year. I was born in 44. He was born in 43.
God. We knew that was coming.
He acts right over you. Listen to Dr. Oz. You're only as old as you feel. Well, he's got a lot of problems.
Well, the two guys next to Bob certainly are on the younger end of the scale. Logan Schuchart, who has been driving now for quite some time, just turned 27 years old, and Jacob is 25. And let's Jacob, you're gonna have to pick that microphone up. I'm sorry, I hate to do that to you. But let's talk a little bit about 2019. Logan, you come home 5th in the national sprint car poll, and boy, it was a breakout year for you.
Yeah, it was a great year. Definitely the best year we've had to date. Since we've been running the Outlaws, I think we had eight total wins, and this past year we doubled that. So it's a great year. You know, Knoxville Nationals running second. Kings Royal had a chance to win that one. That was probably one of the most, I don't know if it beats Knoxville, but I was pretty proud of both those performances. And you know, my grandpa winning Knoxville in '90 is you know, something I always, you know, heard people talk about when I was growing up, and something I watched that video, I guarantee you, probably more than anybody. But maybe not. I'm sure Jacob's watched it a lot. But I always wanted to win the Kings Royal. That's probably one that's one that I really want to win, and definitely a bucket list thing. I want to win as many as I can, but that one is something we're looking forward to going back to this year. But yeah, it's a great year.
Jacob, talk about your 2019. I believe in the final standings, come home 12th in the points. Had two really strong performances, top fives at Devil's Bowl and Eldora, and this close to closing the deal at Stockton. Talk about your year.
Yeah, it was all right. I mean, it's hard. It's fun, you know, racing, but you expect a lot more out of yourself than being 12th in points and only having a chance at winning, you know, a couple races, especially in the year before when, you know, I ran like 4 seconds and led, you know, hundreds of laps and all that stuff. So, you know, you just expect a lot out of yourself, and then when it doesn't happen, it kind of pisses you off. So, but I don't know. I mean, it was just another year of racing that I tried really hard at, and I expected a lot, and it didn't happen. But I don't hang my head about it, because you race against guys like Donnie Schatz and Brad Sweet, and you go to all the big races, so it's not an easy thing. And you know, I didn't know anything about anything on racing wise when I started. So in 6 years to get to where I'm at and even put myself in contention for some of these events is something that I'm proud of. But I definitely, you know, want to go ahead and get that win. So once you get that win, you can open up a new book and then, you know, really start plugging away at things.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about, you mentioned how difficult it is to run with the best of the best. You didn't have a whole lot of prep time. I mean, 2012, you had 3 wins here in central Pennsylvania in the 358 sprint car ranks. 2 years later, you're out running with the World of Outlaws. Talk about that transition. It's not much of a transition, but how that unfolded and what that learning curve has been like for you.
Well, it's pretty much taught me everything I know. I mean, I didn't care about school when I went to school. I mean, I lived in Indiana. I don't know if, you know, anybody knows all that stuff, but you gotta think, like, when these kids go racing, when they start off at whatever age that they start, you know, they're winning go-kart races all the time, and, you know, they're you know, they're the heroes of their go-kart tracks, and then they can, you know, they carry on and they become race car drivers, you know. I lived in Indiana, and my dad had the go-kart track, and me and Logan would go race at the go-kart track, but that's just what we did for fun. That's what we were exposed to, and we didn't, you know, just what we did. Well, when we got into like go-kart racing at Harristown, I'd just show up again, and I'd go race for a couple months in the summertime, and then I'd fly back to Indiana and go to school. So once you get older, like now I'm in high school, and you got your friends and buddies going around there saying, oh, we're gonna go to college, and where are you gonna go to college, Jacob? What are you gonna be? Well, I don't know. I don't know what I'm gonna be. I don't plan on going to college. Well, I don't got no money, and that kind of stuff. So I got thinking about it really hard at a young age, and I lived with my mom, and so I thought about it. I was like, wow, you know, I love racing. I've enjoyed it. I didn't think of it as like I'm gonna be a Mr. Race Car driver and make money and be a professional, become a world of outlaw racer by any means, not at all. But I got thinking about it all, and I was like, I love, you know, being with my dad and Logan and all that. So I was like, I'm gonna leave Indiana. I was 16. I was like, I'm leaving Indiana, and I'm not coming back. I said, I'm gonna pick racing, and I'm just not gonna stop racing. I'm just gonna figure it out. Because he obviously has you know, at that time, Logan had just got into sprint car racing, so he's given us the opportunity to go drive sprint cars, and that's something I've always wanted to do, is drive sprint cars. So now I come out here and I pick sprint car racing. This is what I'm gonna do, and I'm not gonna stop doing it. It don't matter how tough it gets, I'm gonna do it. So that's what I did. And I basically was 17. I turned 17, that was my sophomore year of high school, so I was about 17. And I never went back to Indiana, and at 19, I graduated, I went on the World Outlaw Tour. So I didn't know anything. I didn't even understand how to mount a tire, I didn't know nothing. I didn't know anything. So now I'm out here on the Outlaw Tour, and it's just been a whole progress to get to that point. So now it's all coming together and figuring it out, and thankfully I got I got Logan as a teammate is very successful, and in my opinion, you know, easily top 5 best wing sprint car drivers that we go against, and that's not even being biased. I watch it, and I watch it all. So it's just getting to that point. It's hard, and there's a lot to learn other than just driving sprint cars, and you got to learn the life. You got to learn how to be a professional. You got to learn how to be tough. You got to learn how to deal with getting knocked down and being pissed off and being sad. And you got to be a man. You can't be a little baby about it. And I've been a baby. I cried blues and bitch and moaned my dad, but got to man up and, you know, keep fighting. Because, like I said, once you can open that door and win that race, then you open up a new chapter of life, in my opinion. So that's all that stuff.
And that is good stuff, my friend. We appreciate your honesty, really do. Logan, 2001, you were the Hunterstown Rookie of the Year. 2010, 17 years old, you become the youngest driver to win a 358 sprint car title at Lincoln Speedway. 2012, 2 years later, National Sprint Car Pole Rookie of the Year. And 2 years after that, you're full-time with the World of Outlaws. Bam, 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 and there you are. It's been a whirlwind.
Yeah, it definitely progressed quick. You know, like Jake said, you know, we started out around here, and a couple of guys that got us started here, Joe, Hare, Mike Palumbo. You know, when we started out around here, and I was the same way. You know, I always loved racing. I got to race a lot more than Jake did growing up. You know, I got to race full seasons in go-karts, and you know, it was what I always wanted to do. It's always what I planned on doing. You know, the teacher asked me when I was in school, you know, what are you going to do when you get older? I'd tell him, hey, I'm going to be a race car driver. So a lot of those teachers would laugh, but that was my plan. I didn't really know how it was going to happen, and obviously without these guys next to me, my grandfather, showing the way, I would have had no chance at that. So, but the working on the race car side of it, you know, when we were around here and we first started racing, we had 7, 8 guys that would show up to the race shop, and it was awesome because I just wanted to, I wanted to be a race car driver. I just, I didn't know that part of it. I just wanted to get in it and drive, and going out in the Outlaw Tour in 2014, we didn't, like Jake said, I didn't know much about working on, when my job in the shop was the jobs that nobody wanted to do, having 7, 8 guys, I'd mount tires and wash the car and everything that nobody wanted to do. So when, we got on the Outlaw Tour in 2014, it was an eye-opener, and it like Jake said, it made you grow up. You got thrown out there in the lion's den with the best of the best, and it was not only, trying to make yourself the best driver with, racing with the best guys on the racetrack, but you're trying to beat the best mechanics, trying to maintenance your own car when you didn't really get to do that before, running the valves and the engine, taking care of a car from the ground up. So it was learning everything, right off the bat, and that's really tough. So, I'm glad Jake has that attitude. That's awesome. He's like a brother to me, and I know Jake can do this thing too. He's a competitor. He loves sports. It's something him and I growing up have always been competitors in whatever we have done. I've done different sports growing up and playing football, and so is Jake, and that's why I know he can win races, and he's going to win races. So it's awesome to be able to do this with my family, and to be able to learn from my grandfather and see how far we've progressed and how far we've come.
What do you fellas remember about the day the decision was made that you were going to go outlaw racing? How did that transpire?
I remember when my grandfather came to the shop, his our longtime sponsor and friend, Marty Thompson, my grandfather and him would talk every day, and we were running around here in 2013, and it was just another day at the shop. I think we might have raced on Friday, and we were getting the car ready to run Lincoln on Saturday or something like that, and my grandfather pulled up to the shop, and he was, "Hey, we're going to run the Outlaws next year." And my first thought was, with what stuff? Did we get a big sponsor that I don't know about? Like, where'd that come from? So, but that's just how he figured we were going to be able to do it, with pit pass money. You get tow money to show up to the racetrack for each car. We have 2 cars out of 1 trailer, and that's how we still do it. So then we get so many pit passes for each car. So we were able to have whoever would show up at the racetrack. Like we said, that first year we didn't have anybody come with us. David French came with us for the first month. Jeff Spalding would come out sometimes, but that was how they felt we were able to do it. So that's what we did.
Jacob, what do you remember about that day? What were your thoughts?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I live with my dad. So, where we live is a pretty small area. So I listen to my dad, talk about all kinds of things all the time. I mean, I hear it and hear and stuff. So, like Logan said, it's probably just a normal day at the shop, and I was in for the ride. So whatever. I mean, I didn't have a choice of making any decision. If I wanted to race, if I wanted to do it, and that's why I left Indiana, because I wanted to be with my dad too, and I wanted to do it with my dad. So whatever decision he made and said we were going to do, well, I guess I'm doing it too. I mean, I just had to figure it out along the way, and that's pretty much been the story.
Yeah. Speaking of stories, and for those that don't know, if you guys would share how this organization came to be known as Shark Racing, the story behind that, it's pretty neat.
Yeah. Well, my grandpa, my dad's dad. He flew planes in the war, and they had shark teeth on it, and that's not something that my dad had like on his car, or he did, not in the beginning though. But when he passed away, there's a guy that comes out to our shop. His name is Jack Eckert, and he said, you should take that, that look and put it on your sprint car. That would be really cool. So that's what my dad ended up doing, and he ran with it, and then we liked it because it looks cool. The shark's cool, and we just pretty much rolled with that, and it became. When it became we were going to make a team out of it and all that, it became Shark Racing, and it was, it's been a cool thing. The fans love it. It's great seeing the little kids that that like the Sharks, and it's unique, and you know, everybody's always like this racing, like, you know, this motorsports. Well, when you hear Shark Racing, you know, anybody that follows it, they know who Shark Racing is. There's one Shark Racing, and it's cool to have that.
And I think it's also, I think, you know, the significance there that it's such a personal story, and there's some depth there that's really cool, and I think draws people to it. I appreciate you sharing that. That's good stuff. I mean, in a day and an age where nicknames are a dime a dozen, and people get into motorsports, and the first thing they want to do is print a T-shirt, and they want to have a nickname. I mean, this is a family tradition. Those were what? Were they P-40s, the fighter planes? Does that sound right? Okay. Yeah. So to honor your grandfather in that way, that's really cool. Let's see here. Where are we going to jump around a little bit? Logan, I wanted to come back to you. 2011, Williams Grove Speedway. I believe it was opening night of the National Open in the race with Jason Myers. That was a performance, and I remember sitting on the back stretch going, "Oh my God, this kid's going to catch him." Talk a little bit about that night, if you could sort of walk us through what happened and what you learned about yourself as a driver at that point.
I don't know if what I learned about myself as a driver, I think it spoiled me for a second because, you know, we got to racetrack, I think we qualified 11th. They put me on they inverted then, they put the Outlaws in 34 or however it worked then, so it put me on the front row and it put me next to Fred Reamer, and I remember talking to my grandfather and my dad, and I knew Fred was the type that, you know, he's a Dale Earnhardt sprint car driver, he's going to try and intimidate you, he's not going to give you any room, and as a young kid, you know, I just thought if I'm even with him going in the corner, I'm gonna hold my line. You know, this is my chance to run a big race. You know, this is what I always want to do is run sprint cars with the World of Outlaws. So this is my chance to do that. So I was gonna give it all I had. So we ended up, I don't know if we won the heat race or we finished second. I remember running the first corner with Fred and staying right there, and whether we won it or finished second, we were right there. We made the dash, and we started second or on the pole. One of the two. We started on the front row with Jason Myers, and he had the lead and ended up running him down for half the race and actually passing him at one point, and he passed me back. And I was actually catching him again with about 5-10 laps to go, and at that point, that's why I feel like it made me spoiled. I thought, man, we've been, you know, winning some 358 races this year and won some big races, but man, if it's this easy all the time, it's gonna be great. You know, I'm going to NASCAR, it's gonna be good. But ended up hitting the wall and got a flat tire, and then I think we went up there the next night and didn't even make the show. So it put things in perspective pretty quick about how good those guys are. But definitely a moment I won't forget. I wish it could have turned out a little bit different, and we were able to win the race, especially with, you know, Jason Myers. I think he was winning 4 straight at Williams Grove at that time. So he was dominating, and we were able to run right there with him. So it was definitely a confidence booster for myself, even though the next day put it in perspective for me. But it made us feel like we were going to be able to do it if we figured things out and kept trying at it.
You mentioned you had several wins already in the 358, but as far as 410 experience, you were extremely limited at that point, yeah?
Yeah, actually that was my second 410 race.
That's what I thought.
First outlaw race. The week before, we ran the Sealands Grove, I think, did they call it the National Open? It was the race the weekend before was at Sealands Grove, and it was my first 410 race, and we borrowed a motor from Don Ott, and I think we ended up leaning it out too much, and it burned up in the B main racing with Stevie. But yeah, that was the outlaw race at Williams Grove, was the second 410 race I ran.
Wow. And I think that is going to be a good place for us to take our break. It's just a couple minutes before 2 o'clock. So we're going to take a 10-minute break, and then we're going to come back and draw our 50-50. And so that'll give everybody a time here to stretch your legs if you need to use the restrooms. Again, over here to my right, and also downstairs across from the gift shop. So let's get second half. Someone had asked about a question and answer session. We'll see how things play out. We normally like to make the opportunity for that, but that's as time permits. I will tell you, and I apologize, but I have another commitment right after this, so I have got to keep it close to 3 o'clock. So let's jump back in here. And I wanted to apologize to my Bobby Allen fans out here. Bob's resume is such that, given the time that we have today, and this is about shark racing, so the whole crew, there are chapters of Bob's life and racing career that we've had to jump over. And one of the chapters that we jumped over, and I want to come back to quickly, and you'll understand why, is your venture into modified ranks up at Reading. I remember watching you run up there. I'm going to bring this up because Scott Rickroad is with us today, and Scott says he said, "You remember Bobby's modified that he ran?" I said, "I sure do." He says, "I've got that car." Talk a little bit about your venture into modified racing, and that was a car you built, correct?
Yeah, we built that at my shop. Well, what it was, at that period of time, the modifieds were actually paying better money than they paid here. And I thought, well, I'll go right over there with them. So I went around and I want to be a little different. Everybody was using a Gremlin body, so I used a Vega, the other way around. I used a Chevy Vega body, that's what I used. And so we built it, and I talked to Emery to do it, and we had a bunch of parts around, so I scrounged together and built the car. The car seemed to go fast, except the motor would only run a few laps, then it would quit running. And it took me not till I quit running it to find out what it was. With the fuel filler was too small, the thing up on the motor, and after it made it run lean on fuel, it quit running. And I didn't know it till I came back home and put that same filler on my sprint car and did it. But we didn't run the modified that many times. I can't remember how many times, but it seemed like it'd go real fast and then it would quit running, and et cetera, et cetera. And so then we finally just parked it. But I built that whole car, I think I only had like $3,500 in it, and all the junk stuff laid to the side, except for the motor. Now the motor, it all came through Emery, the big block stuff.
Yeah, good stuff. There's times at Reading, and we've talked about this, we've had Reading Roundtables, we had Kenny Brightbill here, we've had the Tobias family. But those years at Reading, anybody that spent any time up there, those were special years for sure. So, Bob, I appreciate you getting us up to speed on that. Thank you. Jacob, I'm going to come back to you, buddy. We talked about your pursuit of that first World of Outlaw win. Came pretty close this year at Stockton. To your credit, that was not a driver error. That was just a mechanical issue. You're coming down for the white flag. Is that what it was?
It was 2 to go.
2 to go?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, we talked about the breakout year that Logan had, but this has been a great building year for you as well. 2019 was. You had a number of quick time awards, heat race wins. We talked about those top 3 runs at Eldora and Devil's Bowl. Things starting to come together.
Yeah, they do. You're a competitor, so you just really, you expect a lot. I mean, at least I don't know. I just think for my team and myself more or less. I mean, everybody else does their own thing, but I mean, I just want to win and keep on winning. I want me and Logan to win all the races and win all the money. And I just feel like that's natural. I mean, who wouldn't want that? I mean, I know we want that. And I'd sit here and say, man, it'd be great to win 2 wins next year. Or you gotta start by 1 before you get 2. But it'd be nice to say, I want to win 5 races. But realistically, I'd love to win 30 races. I mean, just because I haven't won an outlaw race doesn't make I look at it as like sky's the limit. I mean, I go to every race with the intentions of winning. So I don't just go out to this next season and say, oh man, I can't wait to get that first outlaw win, because I can't wait. But I go into it thinking, man, let's go out there, win as many races as we possibly can. Let's consistently put ourselves in the situation. But you got to be focused at all times, and you got to work hard. You got to be fast and race hard, and hope we can go out there, win all the races, win all the money, and sit up here and be happy as hell.
Let me jump in here one time. What I see, because I've done this for a long time. Actually, 2 years ago, Jacob, when he did have a second, almost wins about 3 or 4 times. But things fell apart on him not understanding the restarts and what's going on. But besides that, it's also motors. We were very lucky that Dryden come along when they did. We wasn't ready for Dryden before that because we couldn't have did him a good job. last year we did really a good job for him, but it was actually a late start. They gave us money just like now in December, but it was too late to get the motors. Well, Jacob lost 2 of his motors. He didn't have very good motors last year, through the year. He was actually more of a breakout year to me the year before. And then this year here, he didn't have them motors to do the same thing, and also there's the same circumstances. And not to, like Logan, he had a heck of a year. We had a good shot at winning the King's Roll, but the motor fell on the start, it fell down. You know, so his breakout of winning that big race was cut short by the motor, wouldn't take off on the start. So we worked hard on the next 2 weeks on figuring that out, and now the thing takes off. I felt like it won him the race at Skagit because he took off fast from Sweet. And really, too, not to back it up too far, the year before, Logan missed a show at Eldora. It's so easy with these guys, it's so tough, and you gotta have everything right. You gotta have the motors right, you gotta have the combinations right, you wanna set fast times, you gotta win the heat race, you gotta be in a dead. Most of them races are not won from out of the first 3 or 4 cars because of the guys, the caliber of drivers, and the race cars, and the motors. This year here, we really feel like we're gonna be the most motorized, the best we've ever been. We had all year to get ready, and this winter we're working hard on it. And I just feel like right now, they both have a good chance to excel from where they were at. And so I'm hoping it works that way for both of them.
Yeah, it's a lot. There's just a lot to understand, and we're young. I mean, yeah, this is gonna be our 7th year, but we're young guys, and we learn every day. So, and you gotta think too, we're taking 2 cars out of 1 trailer with only 3 crew guys, if we're lucky. Well, it's been consistent that way, but that's a lot. I mean, you gotta all work together. I mean, Logan's gotta help me out at times. I gotta help Logan out at times. We got, it's not just us 2 young drivers showing up with our bag and jumping in the car and, doing the best we got. We work at this. I mean, we work hard at it, and I mean, when you go racing in the summertime when it's, 90 degrees and you're trying to win, you're trying to work as hard as you can, and, you run 3 nights in a row, well, your body's a little worn out. So it's a lot. There's a lot that goes into getting that picture of consistency of, winning and getting that whole thing. And we gotta look out for my dad too. We gotta make sure, he's good. So me and Logan aren't technically just race car drivers. I mean, we got a team in a family that we gotta not live up to, but we're trying to make it, just keep building it. And it's my dad's dream, and it's became our dream and our vision, just like his vision. So that's what we strive for, and that's what we live for.
Jacob, I think in the last couple seasons, the element of your career that's been most obvious is how you've learned to race. And when I say race, if a driver moves past you, as a young driver, it's easy to just fold. Now we're seeing Jacob Allen fight back past that driver again, or when you're pressured, you're not folding.
Yeah, I don't try to do anything. I don't like to be, I don't want to say stupid. I don't want to be my dad puts a lot of money into this thing, and he's built something, and I respect what he's built. So I'm not going to be, this kid who gets past and I get all flustered about, and I go fly in there and take us both out. Now I'm going back and building the car and all this stuff. I want to make moves and be smart and do it the right way. So when I learn how to do this stuff, I do it the right way, and it's gonna be a good step into my thing. So I agree with I feel that way when I race, even though that I had the year, I say about my year and what I expect out of myself. But when I am in the car, I do notice that self, within me that, oh, you are moving around better. You are racing better. I feel smarter. I feel like I'm understanding it versus just winging it and see what happens. I try to watch everybody, and I try to listen to drivers or mechanics, and when they talk, they relate what I'm doing out on the track. So that when I go do these things, I do it the correct way. I don't do it just whatever. I'm not gonna go out there and just jump stuff just to do it. I'm gonna go out there and do it the right way. So that's I think that's been helpful in dirt vision. You know, that helps too, because you can watch how the people do drive and slide, and when they're in traffic, what they do, because that ate me up a couple years ago. I'd go out there, I'd be leading the race, hammered down, I mean, just driving my ass off, and here they go, slide me in lap traffic, and I mean, it'd give me about half a heart attack when I get to lap traffic. I'd say, oh man, you can't mess up. I mean, you don't get 2 laps of messing up in lap traffic with these guys. You don't. If you do, you're lucky. It ain't happening. No, they're gonna eat you up, and that's part of it.
I'll tell you this, every morning we all stayed at Toter home, 4 or 5 of us together, him and I slept together, and every morning, if it's 5 o'clock in California, 8 o'clock here, I'm on the phone going. Or right away, if they opened their eyes, they looked at me, I'd say, here's what we gotta do today, here's what we gotta do today. The next year, Logan was able to get a motorhome, and Jacob was able to get one, because they wanted some places they could sleep in a little bit. That's the truth.
Yeah, we had a thing, you couldn't make eye contact with them, because it was 8 o'clock here, 5 o'clock out it'd be 5 o'clock out in California, and if you made eye contact with them at 5 o'clock in the morning, you start talking about, hey, we're gonna put these pistons in this motor, these rods, so if I would wake up and thought, man, I really gotta pee, but you can't talk. I gotta go back to bed, I'm not getting.
Yeah. I mean, this is not just like a one-time thing. This is an everyday thing. I mean, and you know how it goes. I mean, I understand the hearing gets bad, as a race car driver and as age goes on. I mean, the phones, ding, 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 ding. I mean, it's just nonstop. Like, oh man, you get them heads done, Bowman, and all this. And it's like, holy hell, Dad. I mean, the sun's not even up yet. I mean, we just got done racing around.
Go to sleep.
And what was bad is, we didn't have no room in the toter, and it's me, Logan, and 3 other guys. So
They got girlfriends.
that's a different thing. We ain't gonna talk about it. But up until I got my motorhome, I've been sleeping with my dad till I was 25. We would sleep feet to face. So I had to smell his nasty feet. You can't smell mine. I mean, that's how we. But
We couldn't shower for a couple days.
it was cool. This year I was out and I was talking to Brian Brown. We were just talking. He's my buddy. And he goes, man, I've been wanting to be a race car driver since I was this big. And this is Brian Brown. This is a really great race car driver. And he's like, I've been wanting to be a race car driver since I was this little. He goes, if I had to do it, because he's watched us since the beginning, the first time we went out to California, he said, if I had to do it the way that you guys did it, I would have went home. He goes, you guys, there'll never be another you guys. He goes, the only reason that this works is because it's your dad and it's you kids, and this is how he's taught you, and you guys, care about one another. So if one falls, we pick each other back up, and that kind of thing you can't teach. That's all right there in your heart. So that's something we got. I don't know. That's a blessing. That's what that is. So that's something I'm thankful for, and I'm proud of that.
Amen. This, my friends, is why you come to the roundtables. Jacob, I'm going to give you a date here. November 5th, 2016.
Yeah, I'm sure that's when Susquehanna.
There you go. Talk about that day and what it meant to you. And before you do, I'm going to give you this one little bit of perspective. There's a photograph of you in Victory Lane, surrounded. There were so many people down there. Bob, I didn't even see you that night. There were so many people in Victory Lane, and your hands are up. Your face is absolute joy. It is a beautiful photograph.
Well, yeah, I'm pumped up. I mean, that's how I've always been in sports. When I lived in Indiana, I played travel basketball all the time. Did it pretty much all year till I went to Pennsylvania. And I was always that way. I always was pumped up to win. I mean, it's just, there's nothing like winning. It don't matter what it is. And sprint car racing is such a thrill. I mean, I don't know, if you never drove a sprint car, being behind that wheel and feeling that power, and you're racing it like that day, it was Hodnett and DeWeese who rounded out the podium. And you know how good a race car driver is. It wasn't an outlaw race, but it was an outlaw win. Those guys go out there and win the outlaw races when we come to town. So it's just as equal in my mind. So I come off of a year where I'm like, didn't get that outlaw win again, and I get one more race. Well, I go out there and win. It was just such a nice way to just end that racing season. It's like, I did it.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's just, you're pumped up. I mean, heck yeah, you won the race.
Yeah.
I mean, that's awesome. So it's fun.
Top 5,
Yeah.
of course, Jacob with the win. Deweese was runner-up, Hodden at 3rd, Brent Marks 4th, Ryan Smith 5th. That's getting it done.
Yeah, it was nice. It felt very good, and I mean, it just feels good too when you're standing there and you have all the people there and they're happy. I mean, it amazes me how you don't even know the people and they're fans of you and they support you and they're happy for you and they don't even know me. They don't even know me personally. They're happy for you. And to me, that is really cool. I mean, to have people be happy for you, to want to come down, hang out, and smack you on the back and tell you good job and have a beer with you, whatever it is. I mean, to me, I hope that never changes. If I win and you're a fan of me and you like me, heck yeah, I mean, that's awesome. Come down and we'll all enjoy it together. I mean, that's just how I am, and I enjoy and appreciate things like that. It ain't got to be, oh, I won the race. Yeah, it was really good, man. I gotta thank my guys and my other guy. Yeah, well, we'll see you at the next track. I mean, be happy about it. You accomplished something that's great.
Dude, that was beautiful. Let's talk a little bit about Knoxville. 2018 was a good year for you guys. Jacob, I believe you were, what, 13th in the A, and Logan, you were 8th. I know there's a little bit of disappointment there, but I want to talk about this because I think it really shines a spotlight on your integrity as a driver and how you reacted to this. 2018, you set a quick time, and then you ended up, Knoxville was Knoxville. You ended up in the B, outraced Donnie Schatz, and then from there, you pulled right into the pits, missed the scales, and that cost you a little bit. Bruce Ellis interviewed you the next day, and boy, I can't tell you how much I appreciate your response to his question, but he said, what happened? Talk to us about that and how you responded to it.
Well, with the Outlaws, after you qualify, you scale the top 3, and then everybody scales after qualifying. And in the A main, you the top 3 scales. So that's just what I'm used to. We run only with them. We might run Susquehanna and stuff at the end of the year, but that's the same set of rules we run with every night, except for Knoxville Nationals. So after the B main, I was excited. We just outraced Donnie Schatz at the Nationals. We were quick time, so we had a very good chance that if we passed a few cars in the A, that we were going to be starting up front and on Saturday night. So came in from there and didn't even think about it. Just our pit area was before the scales, so I didn't have to drive past it or anything. And I just pulled in our pit area and didn't think anything of it. And teams next to us that were, right outside the transfer spot, freaking out, yelling, screaming, pointing at us. And I still didn't really know what was going on until I got out and I heard him say, disqualified because he didn't go to the scale. So we tried to push it back out and stuff, but you couldn't. So that was nobody's fault but my own. That's got to pay attention to the drivers' meeting and know the rules. I know that happened to Jason Myers one year, and I felt bad because I left our team down. We were all in a good spot, but no, that was nobody's fault but my own. So just how it goes.
Well, you said you had just outraced Donnie Schatz. I don't think that does it justice. For those that have seen the race, it was incredibly close racing. Schatz had gotten back around you, and then, as we talked about with Jacob earlier, you didn't fold. You found your line. Donnie bobbled coming out of 4. It was a rare mistake, and it didn't take much, and that's all you needed. You closed in, you got back around. It was a tremendous effort. But I think one of the things, aside from being honest about the excitement of the moment, which is understandable, giving perspective regarding scaling after a B main, which normally doesn't happen, you said, I feel like I let the team down, and I think that takes a lot of courage. But then, again, to your credit, you started 17th in the A and raced your way up to 8th for what was a solid finish.
Yeah, it was tough because if a lot of you know that actually my grandfather was in the hospital that week. The next, it might have been that day or something, he had to go to the hospital. And so Jacob and I were kind of there on our own. Justin Adams, who's a crew chief on the KKR cars, he was helping us out a little bit that night. But it was definitely different, you know, after that happened on Wednesday, you know, I was mad at myself, but kind of determined to get back in the show, and didn't speak too many words that day. That's all I wanted, was to get back in that car and kind of redeem myself. So I think we went out and set quick time on Friday, and then raced with Brian Brown in the A main, and you know, raced back and forth with him a few times and won the race. So it was definitely cool to be able to redeem myself and get back up there and start 17th in the A and get up to 8th, which was my best nationals finish to that date.
Until 2019,
Until this
when
year.
you put on the show, coming from 22nd to runner-up. Talk about that effort.
Yeah, this year was tough again. We actually, I thought we weren't going to make the show this year. I had a good chance at not making the show. We, our qualifying night, still, I've made the A main at Knoxville the last 4 years, but still haven't made it through a qualifying night. It's either came through either Friday night show or the Saturday night show, running the B main. So Knoxville's tough. There's a lot of good cars there, and it can definitely put you down. You know, inverting those heat races and having to start in the back, it's tough. But this year we had to run the Friday night show again and ran second, and that put us starting 22nd in the show this year. And just what my grandfather's always taught us, you know, whether it's the rig breaking down or what it is, just that not to quit attitude. You just keep plugging away at it until you don't have that option anymore, until the race is over. So that's what we did. We made some changes, and our best nationals for sure. You know, it's tough to know how far you're coming from the back. You know, who's in front of you or where, but I knew we felt really good. We were 9th at the halfway point, and you know, grandfather Bill and all the guys came out at the halfway point. You know, what do you want to change? And it's like, you know, this thing's good. Let's not change one thing. Just go out and race it. So ended up getting up to second, passing Darren Pittman with a lap to go, and it was definitely an awesome experience. Felt like we won the thing.
Speaking of wins this year, 8 victories. You doubled your career total, I believe, with the Outlaws. And while that in itself is impressive, including a 2-race sweep there at Skagit, I think a lot of people back home were just buzzing about your performance, not only at Knoxville, but Eldora, which I believe was shortly before that, where you ran 12th to 2nd. On the biggest stage, you're proving that you're going to be one of the guys to beat in the future, if not already.
What I thought was really cool about Eldora is, like my grandfather said earlier, the year before, I didn't even make the show for the Kings Royal. You know, it was a place that Eldora is one that I really enjoyed going to, but we didn't even make the show the year before, and I was pretty bummed out about that. Pretty mad at myself and disappointed in myself. But you know, coming back this year, you know, our worst finish at Eldora last year was 4th. So other than the Kings Royal, Eldora was just good to us in general. So, but that might have been it might beat Knoxville to me as far as our best performance. I thought we really dominated that race, other than not taking off on the restart. You know, Brent Marks was really good in that race, you know, coming up through. But I felt like if we got out in the lead again, that it would have been tough for them to pass us. So Kings Royal was really cool to be able to run up front like that and pass those cars earlier in the race, and actually passed Sammy and Donnie in one turn. So that was pretty cool. I remember going down the backstretch and kind of going by both of them, thinking, man, this is cool, this is good, let's just keep doing this. So, but definitely both the races were awesome, and expectations are going to be high this year going back there. So it's hopefully we can, you know, do it again or even better.
Bob talked earlier about making some tweaks to the engine program, car not taking off right away, that type of thing. You've got a pretty good line of communication with your engine builder.
Yeah, my grandfather and Michael do an awesome job. It's really cool to have kind of in-house engines, and you know, that's one thing that I think us young guys don't or some of the other young guys that we race with maybe don't appreciate as much. You know, myself, we get to set up the cars and do that kind of thing, but a whole lot of respect to the older generation that had to build their cars from scratch and the engines, and that's something that's really cool to me that I like to listen to, you know, Lynn and my grandfather and all these guys talk about, because that's something you don't see anymore, and that's really cool. And if I was growing up in that day and age, I don't think I would be very good, because that's not the type of driver that I am. You know, if I had to build a car, I wouldn't be able to do it. You know, I can build a race car nowadays, I can put it together, but, you know, welding the car together, building my own engine, it's, you know, something I would, you know, need some guidance on and be able to learn more of. So, and I enjoy all that stuff, and I like learning it, but I wouldn't be able to just like my grandfather did. So like I said, I just have a lot of respect for those guys that were able to do that. You know, I think I came more from the competitive side, sports. You know, I think like I said, if I had to grow up in that day and age, I think it would be different. So.
Your engine builder is Michael Newman, who is family, right? Relation?
Yeah, he's my second cousin. I think of him as a first cousin. You know, we're all close, and really cool about our team that it is set up that way. You know, I have a cousin who builds our engines. You know, my grandfather being who he is. All our friends and family have come to the shop over the years and still do. Our team is very, you know, family oriented and close knitted. That, you know, it's not like some of these other teams. You know, you got these big time car owners and they hire these people. You know, we have some hired guys now, and but we're all close, and we still have, it's very family oriented. And lots of times you see in racing, I feel like that can be a bad thing. You know, you either fight or it breaks up, or they just have their issues, and I don't think we're like that. Definitely, you know, we might argue sometimes, but we do a great job together, and I think we're all very close, and it's cool the amount of success that we have as a family.
Bob, a couple months ago, Davey Brown was here, and we talked to him about relevance. You come from an era where you could obtain an advantage over your competitors before you hit the track through the work you did, chassis work, development, so forth, the lightweight, with your car. Today, for the most part, everybody's got the same thing. They're store-bought parts. How do you remain, as a car owner, as a crew chief, as a mechanic, how do you remain relevant and still be successful today? How does all that experience translate into today's world?
Well, it's common sense. It's like David Brown you're talking. He's won races his whole life with who drives for him. I mean, I still feel a lot of the success is, and Donnie Kreitz was also a guy that won on slick tracks. And Deweese and Kreitz and Dave Brown, they win on the slick tracks mainly. That's their track. The racetracks are wet and heavy. Sometimes they're still good, but not quite as good. Whereas the motor that Davey builds, I understand that motor. That's a motor that likes slick racetracks. I have them for these boys too. I built my version of it. I call it a Davey Brown motor. Well, on certain racetracks, I feel like that motor's better. But what has happened, the World Outlaw guys, because they're always looking, they might not have the motors, and some we don't. We know how to detune the motor now to make them feel like that kind of motor, and that's why you're seeing, and actually, but the last year or two, you see the Outlaw guys maybe run better when they come back here than they did before. And the same token back to me, from my experience of running race cars my whole life, just a little tweaking here on the car or paying attention or doing little things to the chassis and the wings or whatever, and the motors. I have 4 variations of motors that I built, and actually I credit them going good in California, because the first year we went to California, Logan almost won Tulare, and then we put other motors in we thought was better, and all we did was get slower. And learning the track more, learning the shocks more. Them guys are really good on the shocks, but learning that stuff more, they come back tracking better. Well, then I built another motor, feeling like I'd make it all this way just for California, and it seemed to work out, because that was the best Jacob ran there, the best Logan ran there. So that's the things that, through experience and being open-minded, that you see, and you're able to still do the little teeny thing. Then if you talk about it enough, they might do it too. But usually, they all go to their motor builder that builds the same motor for everybody that motor they have. Sometimes they try different motor, but they stick around their other motor a lot. And so I try to, through knowing different motors my whole life, because I had different motors and different things happened that I built it. And I feel like one of the reasons the Weiss runs real good here, you can listen to it if you listen to motors. All the outlaw cars, most of the other cars come off the corner, they're screaming the motors, ranking. Davies come off the corner, it's a different motor, and it's part of the reason they do good. It's not the whole package. You're good at setups, and they do it we're the same way. We build a motor that we feel is good for that part of the year, and we was only able to do that. It's now getting that way because of getting sponsors and time and working on it. And my nephew, he told me 4 years ago, he said, I want to build motors, race car motors. Well, careful what you ask for. I have working every day and night on building motors. He actually had a nervous breakdown one time he did, because I walk in the shop. I said, it don't look like we're getting much done, and we need to get more done here. And he knows I'm playing, but he knows I'm serious. And he gets rattled, because I already rattled him for the beginning of the year. But no, that's what it does. It just takes common sense of knowing what to do. And I always related it to guys playing poker. You gotta have somebody that has enough experience at that poker game a lot to win. You can't come to the table with all the money in the world and think you're gonna win by buying your way through. You can't come to the table broke. You gotta come there with a guy that's got the most experience, can sit there and think clearly through it, and he wins the game more so than others. And that's why Donnie Schatz has been so successful. They had the same team up to last year, the same team for the last, 10, 12 years. Well, they've got everything perfected. They're gonna win. When you break up your team, get different mechanics, different owners, and switch cars, you've gotta work your way back. It's a 4 or 5 year journey to get up there where you can win consistently.
Good insight, good insight. We talked about buying stuff off the shelf, but you guys still do fabrication. You still do some building. A couple of years ago, I believe, as you're upgrading the team, upgrading the equipment, you guys built a new trailer, I believe, right?
Yeah, that's what I've always done. We didn't have the funds and stuff to do it like somebody go buy a trailer and stuff, but we had the knowledge, and we had my shop between my brother and these boys helped too. I was designing a trailer for a couple of years, because the trailer I had when we first went on the road, it was really falling apart. Lots of stories on that. And then we're lucky. We're off the road, and this trailer's sitting down on the wheels and tires because the frames give it all away. And we stay in a guy's place, and he fixed it to get to the next race, brought it back there, and then they worked 2 days, let us go to some festival, to enjoy that weather. We're lucky. A lot of people on the road helped us big time. But then we turned around. I knew I needed the trailer, because the only way we were going to be able to do it is I got to run 2 cars out of one trailer, because it saves $30,000 with 2 cars coming out of one trailer. Because you get to show up money, you don't have the fuel expense, and the toter helps too. It's like up to 40 grand really between the toter and the trailer, the way I do everything. And I ran lots of used tires, because that saves $50,000, $60,000 a year over what the other guys spend. And I don't even think the used tires hurt us as long as we got good ones. But those are they ran for less pay. When they first started, if they wasn't running 15th or better, they had to pull out, because they didn't pay for it to run up there. And then slowly we got where it got up to that to a point, and to a degree, because now we're trying to chase points more than we did before. But it's all common sense, what it takes to do it if you don't have the money. To run the outlaw circuit, it's really in the neighborhood of $500,000 a car to run it. You can do it at $400,000. It takes that much to do it in a good successful season. If you're doing $400,000 or $500,000, you could go run, but not really good. You got to be up there. The big teams with one car, they're up to $800,000 to $1 million on to run that thing. Plus what they want and do a good job to have the right amount of crew members, the right kind of rigs, and do all that. Well, to do that, I didn't have no $100,000 to $200,000 to have a trailer, so we built a trailer based between the old trailer and parts we had, and my one sponsor gave me 10 grand. Point money was like 20 grand that year that I got. It cost us 28,000 or 26,000 to build that trailer to do what it did, and it paid for itself that year.
Jacob, do I understand your car no longer floods? Is that what I hear with the new trailer?
No.
You're in good shape now, right?
Yeah, no, the trailer's nice. We do have it. I think we have one of the best. I mean, it might not have the inside look, like if you go, the guys who buy their trailers or whatever, and you look, in them, it might not have that same look, but how it's built and what you can put in there. I mean, we have a really nice trailer, and the fact that we built it as a family and together, that's something to be proud of. I mean, people just get these trailers and they bought them and then they sell them and it keeps going that way. I mean, I'm always going to look at that. I still walk out and what was really cool, it was just white. Like when we put on the panels, it was just white, and then Dryden comes along and they put that dry in. I mean, I walk out there and say, damn, that thing is nice. And I'm proud of that. I like it. It's good. And we ran out of Dad's old trailer, it's neat because it was Dad's, but it would suck because if it did rain, I didn't have a wing on my car when I loaded up, and it would just pour water in my seat. It was terrible. I mean, you'd have to clean the car. If it was raining 2 days in a row and you washed it on Monday and it rained Tuesday and Wednesday, I'd have to get back out and clean and wipe it off, and it would sweat in there, so all the parts would be all sweaty and water all over it and rusty, and oh my gosh.
It's a new era, my friend. It's a new era. Bob, I mean, you've developed so many relationships over the years. You talked about smaller sponsors that have come alongside to help you out, whether it's with repairs, money, engine, whatever the case. And that served you well, has served you very well over the years. Dryden comes on board. That's a whole nother level. Anybody jump in here. How has that changed the dynamics of the team, aside from the obvious that maybe there's more financial support?
Well, it definitely was a big help because the biggest thing we were lacking is crew members. That's one of the biggest things. So that enabled us to have really not a lot. Dryden definitely a good sponsor, is a big help. Couldn't do without them. But it allowed us to hire. Now we can hire 2 guys per car, and instead of one guy between the 2 cars, one guy. So we can hire 2 guys. So it helped us there, and it did help us on the motor end of the thing. We do build our motors, and our motors, most of the motors, I don't know if y'all know them, they're 55 to 60 grand anymore. We build a brand new motor like that. We can build I build them all in stages, but they're in between the $40,000 and $45,000 range. So I can build 3 motors to one guy's 2 motors, and basically that's where it's at with the money Dryden gives. But it's definitely a help, and it's definitely a stepping stone. This is the most this year that I see it help us. It helped us last year. It's just like I always tell the story. Look, if you're starving and they tell you end of the month here, I'm gonna give you a bunch of money to eat off of, by that time you're dead. And that's the same way, if they give you the money in the middle of the year, all you're doing is getting caught up on the things you should have been done. You don't really, it's definitely a help, but it's not an improvement. This is the first year we're able to do it before we go racing this year. And that'll be, to me, you might not see it all the way, but to me, it's gonna be a big help for both of us. We're gonna be motor ready for every race. I call it to go to war, and we're gonna fight them right face to face this year.
Man, I can't wait for this. This is gonna be good. I know you guys you've got to be excited. It's been a big boost for you guys. I mean, the learning curve, the improvements out on the speedway. Now you've got some additional financial support, more exposure through Dryden, I would think. That's got to be good all the
And
way
the oil's
around.
good. It made our motors faster too.
Really?
Oh, definitely, dying at both of them. It was depending on what dying at what time or whatever, it was anywhere from 8 to 11 horsepower more torque. It definitely oil was good.
There you go.
And wear out is easy too.
What's that?
They're cleaner inside too.
Oh, okay.
And wear out is easy.
Logan, I want you to talk a little bit about, we've talked about the learning curve. We talked to Jacob about his improvements on the speedway. We've seen yours. But there's a whole different side of racing, which you guys have been talking about, and that's maintaining the car and so forth. But the new trailer, it sounds like that's going to give you even more organization, more functionality, within your day-to-day routines. Talk about the importance of being organized out on the road and how much that can help the team.
Well, the more you can focus on, I think you said what Kenny Well used to say, you win your races in the shop, but definitely being organized and having, like Jake said, our trailer might not have the lounge and stuff in the front, but to us, it's the best trailer in the pit area, be able to run both cars out of it. And, most teams, I think they can hold maybe 3 wings in their trailer. We can hold 8, 2 on the car, or 1 on each car, and then 6 up top. We can hold 10 front wings, 3 front ends in there. So we use the my grandfather and Joey, Jack, and all them, they designed it to hold the parts that we can. It's a rolling garage, and we can be out on the road for a long time. So, but the way we have it set up is my stuff's kind of on the left side of the trailer, Jake's stuff's on the right side of the trailer. But the organization is it's good. It's what we needed, and just helps you be ready to race. You know, we can go through a routine. You know, the guys can go through a routine and kind of know what needs done, and you know how we can improve. But definitely, organization is key to any race team and trying to make themselves better.
Logan, you mentioned Jack. Is that Jack Eckert?
Jack Eckert, yeah.
Yeah, and this is a name that's been around, he's been around for a while, yeah? Can you talk a little bit about who he is and his contributions?
Yeah, Jack Eckert's been around for a long time. He helped my grandfather back when he was a teenager. He started helping you, but he's been around for a long time. He went to help Sammy for a little bit. Now I think he's never really stopped racing. He's been around racing for a long time. He races go-karts himself. He actually works at Harley Davidson with my dad. But he's never stopped coming to our race shop. Has always been a huge part of our race team and helping fabricate things. Had a lot to do with building our race trailer, and has been a great friend to us. So he's been around a long time. Very smart guy with race cars. We joke around all the time. I think he retires next year from Harley. So we're ready for him to come on the road for sure. He's a smart guy.
Yeah. We've touched on today how you've been able to cut costs and increase your profitability as a business, and you've got a sound strategy there. There are some guys that are out on the road that many of us may not know on an intimate basis, but let's take a guy like Jason Sides, who's been out there for a while now, but doesn't seem to meet with a great deal of success. How do guys like that stay out there and make it work?
You're asking the wrong guy.
I'm asking the wrong guy. And if you don't have an answer, that's okay.
No, he has several sponsors too. He doesn't, you don't see it, but he has several sponsors, and they run it like a family. He already owns all the stuff. That's the biggest thing for us. To really start a team on the Outlaws, you're looking at 600 to a million point two to start a new team motor-wise, because each car needs 5 motors. They need backup parts, et cetera, et cetera. That's what we've been building up to, that we finally got that now. Whereas Jason Sides, he did have some success for a while. He has several sponsors. I notice he buys new tires all the time. Him and his brother runs it. He usually has one guy help unless he's in the area that somebody else helps. But I don't see how he does it too sometimes, because I had it all up on. I agree with you there. But I do know that he has, I hate to say small sponsors, but he has some sponsors, maybe not the gigantic big ones. I mean, that's what we were lucky about. When we first started, I had several guys that were my sponsors back in the day, and they helped me. Basically, it added to be about $50,000 to first start with, and then I cut the corners the other way. One helped pay for the fuel, one helped pay for this, pay for that. Well, that's all the little it takes, and then you've got to be able to run good or not run good. That's what I said when we went to run here. We started running the 410 motors here. I knew that we were done in about 3 more weeks because it didn't match up. And so me and my one guy from Milwaukee talked it over, and he told me he'd give me 20 grand. And at that time, we did have the go-kart track, and I took 20,000 out of that. Well, that was a start. The beginning of the year is the worst. You go out to California, it rains out. It's hard to. We got to stay at people's places, let us park the rigs, and they take us out to eat and buy the food, et cetera, et cetera. That was always the one that we almost couldn't make it through there. And that was just up to about a year or 2 ago. And now it seems like we can make it through that. And the Outlaws know that, because this is the first year we're start the race, go to Florida, come home for 4 weeks, and go back out. Hopefully, we can skip the rainouts. But it's just how you got to cut all them corners to do it. And Jason Sires, he must cut them in certain ways. I do think they do get room some, but they do stay in their trailer a lot too, in their motor a lot. Like Craig Kinzer, they never buy a room. They stay in that truck and trailer thing every race. And it's a big thing. You'll spend, one car will spend, if they get rooms every night, they're going to spend $30,000 that year. Even our bill's staying half that, it's still 23, a little over 20,000. And then it's getting up to where you get more crew members, you gotta have 2 rooms, so that's 50,000. Those are all the corners. When you cut the corners on about 5 things, you're talking 100 grand. So now you can do it all, maybe 350 or 340,000. And then like Jacob's car, I call it both ways, I can look at either way. Since his car, I call it piggybacking. You got one car, no matter what, it has to pay for the fuel, pay for the repairs, it has to pay for all that stuff. That you have to do that no matter what. You put another car in there and it runs, and it gets the show-up money and all that. It's actually that car, even if it runs and a lot of times it does, it pulls out of the race. It's making more money than it is when it's up there because he's getting 800 a race plus it piggyback the other car. That car's still making a profit of 30,000 that year. It builds another motor. I put it all in the motors. So that's, and Jason Sires, back to him, that's what he does. He has what he has there, what he's accomplished, and what he has in his trailer and stuff, and he has help a little bit to get him through that. But through it all, I seen him blow 2 or 3 motors last year. That's what's starting to happen. He's not gonna be a contender to be up in the points because his motors are wore out, he's blowing motors up, and because he can't keep up with the thing. So I don't know how long, he was gonna quit about a year or 2 ago, and something gave him another boost to keep going. Maybe he had nowhere else to go, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm gonna imagine after you've been at it for a while and it's something you sincerely enjoy, it's tough to walk away.
But if you run out of money, you run out of money.
Well, yeah, yes, so. Speaking of money, Lynn, we have some money we're gonna give away here real quick.
Yep.
I'll tell you what, let's do this. We'll take a couple questions and then we're gonna have to call it a day. It's about 5 minutes of 3 here.
We're gonna let Alan draw the,
How much?
Football games to watch.
Oh,
yeah, they gotta get him out of here.
how much we giving away?
Well, $185.50.
Yeah, Paxton used to tell me all the time, get the one in the corner.
Get the one in the.
That son of a gun could feel on a pill box, he could fill a single digit. He always- Am I right?
No, I have done something like that.
Yeah.
Hold it up over your head, and they had these poker chips and there was a number written on it. And it was always twilight. Well, of course, that's the only thing I talk too much. I could see the number on the bottom. And so I knew where to draw the number. And I told Ronnie Schumann, that's the outlaw guy that made him cover the whole bottom of the thing. I said, there you go again, ruining your setup.
After hearing those guys pick on you, I realize nothing has changed in 50 years down at your shop.
They're not gonna change in 50 years. They don't, well, Paxton, do you think he's changed in 50 years? Okay, there you go.
Call the number.
Are you ready for a reunion? You wanna go out on the road with these guys this year?
Oh, hell no.
No, I'm just-
I caught his act.
He went out on the road. I'm the only one who made him go out on the road. He didn't want to leave Tootsie Land. He wanted to stay here.
I stand corrected. It's 148.50.
148.
I got the-
Write that one down. Tootsie Land. We've already used that. All right, here's our winner. 288396. 288396.
396?
Yes, John, it's a green ticket.
There we go.
All right, bring it on up. All right, we got time for just a couple questions. John.
Question to Jacob and Logan, what's your favorite track to race on when you're out on the circuit, and what's also the hardest track to race on? Or race
The one you went at's your favorite. I'd say the hardest, they're always, and that's the experience thing. You like going back to some of the races, everybody thinks, some of these racetracks that you don't run good at, that you don't want to go back, and in a way you do, because you want to figure them out. So I always relate to Hopstock, Indiana. A lot of people love that racetrack. I've hated it the last 5 years. I actually tweeted that this year. Our last 5 years we went there, I finished 22nd 4 years in a row. I think last year I finished 17th, and I was like a little happy about it. But this year we went back there, and I was actually running third, and got taken out. Had to go to the work area, went to the back, and came back up and finished 9th. And we got in the pit area, and everybody's like, "Oh man, like sorry, like, not sorry, but man, this stinks. Like, I know you can do better. I was like, man, I'm happy. Like, I feel like I won the race, 9th after finishing 22nd 4 years in a row. I'll take it. So there's always tracks that you're not running good at, but I like going back to them because that's what makes you better. Especially, if you want to win an outlaw championship, you got to be good at all of them. So there's gonna be tracks that are your favorites, like Eldora. I love going there. But there's tracks like Hopstock, Indiana, you want to go back and you want to figure them out because you got to be consistent.
Yeah, that pretty much nailed it. I mean, there's definitely always gonna be like tracks like Eldora and Knoxville that you just they excite you to go to. I mean, you look forward to them, but like he said, I mean, there's some tracks out there. I know there's one. For me, there's one track. I mean, out in the middle of nowhere, Montana, and I would complain about this. Why would we go out to this place? I mean, we're out here. Nobody would ever find us. We are so far away from society. And I just thought it was a terrible track, and I didn't like it. But then I would complain about it. Then the next year, here I am leading the race, getting ready to win this race before a yellow came out. And Brad Sweet or Pittman beat me. It was like 2 nights in a row. These are 2 tracks up in that area. I couldn't stand going up that way. I would really cry about it. And here I go there a couple years ago, and both nights I run second, and I'm leading laps, and I'm like, man, I can't wait to go back there. I love that place. That's awesome. So it's like, if you can figure out how to be good at all of them, they're all going to be fun. And that's the beauty of it, because then you're figuring out how to be a contender of winning on every track that could be thrown at you, no matter what surface gets thrown at you. I mean, I could tell you at Stockton, where he won this year and I had a chance to win. If you could feel what that track feels like inside that car, I mean, you are bouncing around. I mean, you go in there wide open and you don't know what's going to happen. I mean, the holes throw you every which way. You're literally riding a rodeo or like motocross guys where they go through the whoops like that. That's what it feels like. I mean, it kind of is terrible, but we ran good there and we've been consistently good, so it's kind of fun. I mean, but if you're not doing good and you're on this cowboy track and you're bouncing around, you're hitting your head off the seat every time you go in the corner and you feel like you're going to crash, like, oh man, this sucks. But now, heck yeah, I mean, I look forward to going to Stockton and riding the rodeo.
For those of you who have not seen footage of Stockton, that is a perfectly apt description. And it's exciting.
It's rough.
It's exciting.
It's rough.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
What's it like to drive at Eldora?
What's it like to drive at Eldora? Okay.
It's nice. It's fast. It's smooth. It is one of the best. I mean, I would say like the top 3, like in my opinion, in no particular order, would be like Knoxville, Eldora, and Port Royal. I think they're the smoothest, raciest. I mean, they're elite racetracks. I mean, they're top of the line racetracks, and they're just the feeling of being fast and smooth, and you can slide and move around, and it's nice, and there's special places to race, and we're fortunate to be able to get to go to places like that.
I'd agree with that statement.
Well played, sir. And we got time for one more. Anybody?
Yeah.
Doug, yeah.
This is for Bob. How many different cars did you build for other drivers over the years? I think you built one for like Kenny Slayball.
How many different cars did you build for other drivers over the years?
No, I got some timers. I don't really know. I mean, I built cars for Paxton, Slayball, Opperman.
Smokey.
I went 2 or 3, Dane Stanball. I went for 2 or 3 years of building cars, and then that was it. And then I built one for Smokey Snellwaker. I don't really know. I'd say I probably built at least 30, 40 chassis we built, and then probably at the most, maybe. And then usually they were, at the time, Ferkel, I built one for Ferkel. All the kind of the top, more or less the top guys kind of like to build them. I don't really recall every one of them.
Very good. Okay, parting shot. I got a quote here from Bob, and I want you guys to weigh in on it. How does this quote relate to your current circumstance, your career? Bob said, in the beginning, when you first start racing, you're young, you've got lots of desire and no experience. Then in the middle of the deal, you win a lot because you've got a good mixture of desire and experience. In the end, you do it all on experience.
Yeah, I think that's, I mean, that experience is, that's it, man. I mean, like you're talking about, you know, how it's not building your own chassis and all the, you know, back in the day, everybody's building all this stuff. I mean, that experience and that knowledge of stuff, I mean, you can't take that away from those guys. I mean, I feel bad for, thankfully that's how my dad, we don't build our chassis and stuff, but the way, his old school way of teaching us is going to be very beneficial. It's beneficial now, but later on it's going to be really beneficial because these other kids, they jump in their cars and they take her out for a spin. They don't understand putting weight in the car. Heck, I don't even know if they understand what stagger is half the time. I mean, they get the gist of, you know, if you're loose or if you're tight, but they don't get it. I mean, I listen to it and I hear it. So it's going to bite them in the ass one day. It ain't going to bite us in the ass. So that experience is going to be great. And I think the desire doesn't go away. It don't go away in my dad. I don't know anybody, and I listen to people, and I'm around the elite sprint car mechanics, drivers. I'm surrounded by it all, and that desire is not 1 ounce burnt out of my dad. My dad is the big, I think he's the big, for a 76-year-old man, he's the biggest badass I've ever seen. I mean, he's a bad man. I mean, he wants to win. Like he said, what did he just say? He said, we're going to war and we're going to go fight them face to face. Now that's hard. That's tough. I mean, that is tough to come out of this little old man. And that is good. So I just the desire doesn't get burned out, and the experience will keep helping you. And I think that's great.
The only thing that pisses me off, they got way more stuff than Pax and me or anybody had. They got some stuff in that garage now. Race cars, motors. This year here, they're ready, like I said, to go fight them.
Yeah, but we couldn't do that without you, and you need to always know that it would not. We ain't sitting here without you. You got us here, and that's believe that.
Definitely the passion part of it, like you talked about earlier, like that we went out to California and stuff the first couple years, how you know, like Jake said, you know, you have some of these kids that, you know, come along with a bunch of money. You know, we didn't start out like that, but what we were rich in is having my grandfather and the experience and the knowledge that he brought along, and that attitude and determination that he has, that especially when anything would go wrong with the truck or trailer or the race cars. You know, we went out the first year and crashed at Las Vegas with the only car we had, and we had a frame sitting up top, and I figured we were going home then, and that's something that I definitely didn't always have. I didn't have his attitude, and that's something that he has taught both of us, and how to keep pushing forward. And that's the part that we're rich in, is having him to teach us that, and that, you know, even if you have the, you know, good race car driver, you're skilled at certain parts of it, that there's things that you can work on and use that determination and that passion to drive yourself forward. So he's taught us that, you know, how do I want to say it? He has a video of his 70th birthday, and he says that you might not be the best, but if you work at it and you work hard enough at it and you have the determination, you can and will be the best. So that's the side of Bobby Allen that we live with every day, that has made us and got us to the point that we are. So I'm very thankful for that.
Good stuff, brother. Good stuff. You want to say that, Bob?
Well, come here, I'm talking now, you guys gotta say that, you know, part of it.
All right, well, we are going to officially, in front of all these fine people, issue the EMMR challenge. The EMMR challenge is, we're going to give each of you an Eastern Museum of Motor Racing cap, and we want some World of Outlaws Dirt Vision airtime this year at some point. So pass that down. We're hoping to see these caps on Dirt Vision or on television at some point. So, gentlemen, thank you so much. Folks, here's the 2 takeaways from today. A, we're going to war, and B, it's not going to bite us in the ass. So remember that. Bobby Allen, Jacob Allen, Logan Schuchart. Give them a round of applause.